Yo, it's the storyteller. Holla at your boy. That's been something on my mind that's been bothering me for the last about 2 weeks or so. You know how you have something you just wake up to and it's just there and it never goes away. No matter how you try to shake it, try to do other activities to erase it, it just stays there. So, these things I take as a sign. Maybe it's my intuition. I don't know, but I know that I really don't talk about these things a lot for me being incarcerated. I try to put that so far back behind me because I catch headaches. I catch headaches for like days after I discuss about being incarcerated. It bothers me that much. So, it was a life that I was forced to live, and I didn't accept that life. But anyway, like I was saying, that I like to tackle, when I do talk about being in prison, I like to tackle the emotional side. It's a psychological warfare that you go through when you're in those conditions. For me, in my experience, I kind of grew up in there, unfortunately. But, God have a purpose, and it made me a better human being and a better man. So, like being in there, I had to leave a life out here in society, first of all. The only life that I ever known. This is at a kid. I was just a baby. To go to a life, to adapt to a life, to survive. And like I expressed to people, that when I entered that facility, MSP, and got off that bus, I felt this aura. It was an unwelcome aura. And within that exhibit of a fraction or whatever, I made up my mind, kill or be killed. So right then and there, you have to adapt, because you're going to feel it, and you're going to feel the danger and everything, and that's what I did, unfortunately, but that's what I did. But it's a psychological warfare once you're up in there and going through there, trying to learn the tricks and the trades, the do's and the don'ts and stuff like that. And you come from a life where you had different sets of rules, or it's in society, the only life you ever known. So, that's been on my mind. And it was crazy though, because I had to the life that I once knew, that I grew up in, I had to put that up on a shelf. You had to put it up on a shelf, and you have to adapt to this new way of living, and find your way through there. And that's what I did. And I was young, just a baby, and I learned a lot. I was always solo, and I knew that one day that it's a possibility I'm going to get out. I never lost that hope, so I was always solo, trying to figure things out. I'm just a baby, and I was kind of lost and just trying to figure life out. You know what I'm saying? And how did I get here? And what it's going to take for me to get up out of this situation. So as I got a little older, start finding out who I really are and my purpose and what directions I had to go through. Y'all have to understand, I had to not only just the life I once knew out here in society, I had to put that on the shelf. And I also had to put, when I started realizing my purpose and I grew up, I had to put that life that I had to adapt to on the shelf. But everything is always in I can see it. It's in eye range. I can see this, and these are reminders of where I come from, where I'm at, and where I'm trying to go. But in the course of that, you know, you're constantly watching over your back. You can get stabbed or get killed at any time in those conditions. So, that's another little area that, you have to adapt to. You have to learn how to be able to feel things. You have to, your guards have to be up at all times. You really couldn't even sleep in those conditions and stuff. So this is what I was going through while I was in that transition, and that hell, and that fire pit, And like I said, I got older and I found myself, and I know which way I wanted to go. But in the course of that, we have different rules once you're in prison, at the prison that I was in, MSP, Missouri State Penitentiary, and you see things that don't make sense, but you have to adapt to that life to survive, or perhaps to even make it out. And what I mean by that, it's like going up for parole. And you have to balance these things out. Which one balance out in your favor? Telling the truth or telling a lie? Admitting to something you didn't do, and admitting to something you didn't do is way better than telling the truth. A lot of people's got out by saying, I did this. I expressed great remorse. And that was the hardest thing for me being in prison and trying to get out. My only hope, window of getting out. That was the hardest thing for me to do and to accept, But you go through this transition and you adapt to this life, and all fur and love of war. And you begin to become numb to it. It become natural. It's just like, it's something that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And I'm only saying this to educate you youngsters out there. It's not just your physical being in there. It's a lot of things you're going to have to go through. You're going to peel back layers of your life that has been untouched for many years, that you probably thought was just a deja vu or mirage or something, or it really happened. This is when you get still. This is when you at your purest. This is when you at your best for thinking, because you're dealing with 99.9% mental. And that's a hell of a psychological warfare that you have to go through. But anyway, let me get back on track about the warfare and things that I was toiling and fighting with. Now I got my purpose. I know I'm grown up now. I know where I want to go. I know which way and who I become and what I want out of life. So, I got set 5 years. After 5 years, they kept setting me back for 5 years at a time. And I went melancholy. That means depressed to the spirit, because of that. And I questioned God. And then I had to adapt to another way of life as well. So now we're talking about 3 to 4 different things I had to adapt to for us in life. I had to put over here the life I once knew called society up on an eye view. I had to put the life that I adapted to, the new life that I adapted to, up here, because I found out who I am. I'm older now and I know which way I had, I wanted to go in life. But that was an eye view too. It was a reminder. And then I had to also put the person I become, the life that I wanted, and the way I was going. I had to put that up on the shelf as well. Understanding, follow me now. I explained to you, you have to tell a lie to survive with the parole system. You have to admit to something you didn't do. And that good of your chances of getting out, it outweighs the truth. That bad, it outweighs the truth. So naturally, you're going to gravitate towards that. Unfortunately, but that's just the way it was. But yeah, I went through self-examination after questioning God and asking God, what have I done to deserve such treatment? And I did it for about a year and a half. And God opened my eyes and gave me some sight to see or things to think about that I never would have thought about. And I understand now how easy it is for one to turn in on themselves or commit suicide. So I got a glimpse of all of that, and I have a different respect for those peoples, you know. But I was strong enough to come up out of that. It wasn't like I was there to turn in on myself or to commit suicide. It was there for me to get some type of cleanser or get some type of validation from God. You know, and once I went through that and came up out of that, you know, God give me visions. I don't know if people believe in that, but I have, you know, sometimes dreams from above. They are visions. And I told my sister that I was getting out this time. Now, in the course of me going back up this time, even though I had a vision, this is how strong and this is how powerful the psychological warfare that you go through takes over no matter what. You know, even though I had those visions and I truly believed in God, you know, that God gave me those visions. But when I went up for parole, you know, this was a war that I had to fight too psychologically, going up for parole. So I'm up in parole and everything, you know, my hand, you know, you must keep your hand on the table at all times. And they began to ask me questions about pertaining to my case. And I did what I'd been doing or what everybody else do. Yes, I did it, even though I know I didn't do it. Yes, I did it, and I stressed great remorse, you know, and everything. So it was about 3 of them. They asked me the same question in different ways. And I answered it the same. Yes, I did it. You know, I stressed great remorse. Now, knowing that I didn't do this at all, I'm not guilty for this. But telling a lie outweigh telling the truth. And many people, the percentage of people's getting out by telling a lie is greater than the ones who's telling the truth. So no, I'm not finna waver. I'm not finna go over on this side right here. I have to feel something deep within me and between me and God to utter those words out my tongue about the truth. So after so long, they all went around and they asked me a few more questions, and then one of them stood up and said, Mr. Broken, we got your case right here. We got your whole case right here. We know you wasn't the one who killed that woman and shot that woman. All we want to know is, was you the one in this case that it said that you was just there? So I took a moment, and within them seconds or whatever, I'm just talking to God and, you know, asking God give me the right words to say and things of that nature. And, you know, it's sad, but I kind of nod my head down and said, yes, I was that person that was just standing there. Now you see the psychological effect that it have on you, where I have to bow my head down and tell the truth in hopes that they're not tricking me, because they got all this stuff recorded, that they're not tricking me to tell the truth and never get out. So I was going through so much emotionally, spiritually. I hesitated on a whole lot, and these are the things that we go through, and this is my life after getting set back 5 years, after 5 years, and then when melancholy, depressed to the spirit, and then I come up in here, and everything, it's like y'all trying to trick me, but I communicate with God within those fractions of seconds, and I ask God to utter off my tongue the right thing to say, and I left it in God's hand, and when they said that, I did. And then in the course of this, how the tension got broke. One of the parole officers asked my sister, she said, "Who stayed with you?" She said, "Just me and a big old dog." So we all started laughing and everything. It broke the tension that was in there. That was much needed. And when I start coming back to this awakening and to this entity, because I was zoned out, I was putting everything I had in me to get out and focusing on saying the right things and making sure everything is intertwining accordingly. And that's when I had my hand like this on the table, and I felt something it felt like some fluid was up under my hand. So I looked down. It was a puddle of sweat. I didn't know your hand could sweat that much. It was about like that, a puddle of sweat. And they looked down, and I scraped it all back on me and continued to go through the process of the parole hearing. That was a hell of a experience for me. That was a hell of a sight to see, So I just want you youngsters out there to know and to understand, it's not just your physical being and your partners that's in the joint. It's gonna be you toiling and fighting with yourself, your inner self. You have to go through a psychological warfare while you're in those conditions. And it's not all good, all don't make it out. I done seen strong mans turn in on themselves, So just remember, when you're in prison, you're in hell, and you're gonna be walking through hell until you make it out, or you're gonna fall weak and you're never gonna make it out. You're gonna commit suicide or whatever. So, I just had to share that with you all because it's been on my mind, and I think this need to be talked about. I think people need to be aware of this, what you really go through. I'm not going to continue talking about this too much longer because I don't really like going there. But I'm living testimony to things psychologically, emotionally you're going to go through. So, this even have to do with your family member coming to see you. You have to be able to separate these things. Let them know, I don't need you to come up and see me a whole lot because I got to stay focused on what's going on in here. Because that can affect you from getting out too, because you can't go back with your family. It makes you sad, and you snap on somebody, there you go, you get killed or you kill somebody. So these are the things that I had to keep balanced. I had to keep everything balanced, you know what I'm saying? And everything on the shelf, over here and over there. So, just remember, it's not what you think. And I'm sharing this out the bottom of my heart, and everybody that know me, that's been there, they know I don't really talk about that place like that. So, and this is a warning. One love from the storyteller. Holla at your boy.